Welcome to Turning the Tide, episode 6. This is the forum and platform for listening to the African young professionals' voices. And this time we're in the new year, 2022, crumbs, time goes fast. And most of us have taken stock of our lives in the last 2 years in some way or another. While everyone's experiences were different and we weren't all in the same boat, I think we were definitely all in the same sea. And even now, we are all still trying to reevaluate and navigate our way through it. So I'm so pleased to have Carsten Bjornson joining us for this New Year presentation, this New Year video. It's going to be an exciting 15 minutes where Carsten and I are going to be in a conversation. Many of you will already know Carsten. He's ESRI Middle East and Africa oversight, and he's also got this great, incredible depth of experience in land administration, mapping, SDI, supporting ESRI in the strategic engagements with you and others. So welcome, Carsten, to this. And we're going to be talking together about geospatial infrastructure. And I'm so pleased you've agreed, Carsten, to give us some of your top tips at the end of this conversation. So that first thought I had, and love to hear about it from you, where is the future moving? Because ESRI, you do the full spectrum of applicable software, for example. But when I was talking with you earlier, I rather got the impression that ESRI is not just about building big platforms. So I'd really be interested to hear about your perspective, perhaps with your ESRI hat on as an insider, but also your personal perspective.
So one of the things that we work with is geospatial infrastructure. And things has evolved over time from PC to enterprise, and now into what we call geospatial infrastructure. And you can say, what is that? Well, traditionally, when we talk about software systems, we talk about platforms. So in our world working in GIS, it was all about software development. But if we go into geospatial infrastructure, it is so much more. So what we can talk about here is, it's really what we call system of systems. And I'm taking on my ESRI hat now, because it is literally a system that talks to systems. So it's not just about software development, it's about how does system talk to systems. Yeah. But very importantly, top of that, it's the whole ecosystem of getting this to function. And what do I mean by that? Well, it is about, of course, the hardware, the software. That's what we can call the technology part. It's about the data that goes into it. It's about all, how people organize themselves around this. How do they actually structure themselves inside organizations to actually get this to work? It is about how do you communicate that? How do you create new, what we call value added, or how do you do value added? How do you create new products based on this technology that can go forward? It's about how do you communicate this, and how do you communicate between systems? How do you, with protocols, and for example, there are the whole standardization thing. So we need to make sure that things are standard, like your smartphone. The reason why you can do messaging, like we can talk here, is because there are standards behind how you communicate. Yeah. But that's important in our world too. And then there's the whole.
I was just going to say, Carsten, because you keep mentioning this word communication. And networks and crossing across, and it's not just communicating systems to systems, it's about people too. But what do we need to do? You've spoken about communication, and I would think almost you're talking about agility as well. And crumbs, with this massive societal change going on against the backdrop of planetary shifting, i.e. climate change, what is it that our professionals, young and old, then need to do, given the communication that you've been talking about, and giving the technology, hardware, data, organizing, and so forth? Where do we come in, and what do we do?
So you're kind of jumping ahead of my thoughts here, and maybe I'm explaining too much here, but but when let's go back just for a second to the geospatial infrastructure. You mentioned communication. So the importance in communication is not only that systems can talk to systems and things can, data can be exchanged, because what we need to do and to solve all the problems that we just talked about is information. And we need to have reliable, authenticated information. But when you also talk about communication, it is, like you say, also between people. That people actually can understand the technology, can understand what data it is, and can take that data and use it and communicate on how to use it, in what we call communities inside ESRI. So you can start to build communities, whether it's professional or it's in the village or, your suburb or whatever it is. But when we talk about the geospatial infrastructure, so what is it we need to do? Well, in order to get this to work, we need to understand everything. And that's kind of one of my pep talks here, that it's not just about being able to run a program. There is so much more here. And that's exactly what we need to do. So we really need to embrace the geospatial infrastructure and start to understand all the components, the technology components. How do you build your organizations, whether you're a private company or a startup or you're a government agency? How do you structure that so you can utilize the best of the technology? Again, going back to standards, we're the ones that understand what's going on, are the standards sufficient? Because remember, everything we do today is based on a history of past technology. So one of the things we need, where young people can come in is to start to understand the technology and start to make sure that everything else is lifted up so you can take advantage of that technology. And I think our young surveyors have a very important role in that, because there are foundational things that they understand about land administration that not many people do. And that's where, you need to come in and make sure that on one side, you understand the profession, but at the other side, you understand how to adapt this geospatial infrastructure into that whole thing. And from my work, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. No, I
was going to say, from my work in especially Africa, there is an urgent need, or actually I would say desperate need, for people to come in and start to help everyone understand this and help lift everyone.
That's really interesting, Carsten, because you're talking about this idea of embracing, embracing geospatial, but also that young surveyors are embracing the communities of people as well. So technology and people. And I wonder, are you leading on, may I suggest, to why this really matters? With perhaps a societal need for secure land title and registration. Is there a bigger why here?
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is one of my. You talk about one of my peps. I'm a firm believer in a Peruvian economist, and you know him, Diane. That's Hernando de Soto. And one of the things he talks about is the capital, the value. It doesn't necessarily mean money, but the value that's tied into land. And if we don't register land, we cannot release that capital. We cannot release that value. So to answer your question, if we don't know who owns land or where land is, how are you going to attack climate change? How are you going to ensure food security? How are you going to take efforts to save water? And how are you going to release the actual monetary value that's tied up in the land? And that is one of the key things, one of the things that we communicate a lot from ESRI side is that our mission is to basically help people in Africa. Yes, we are a commercial company, but the foundational value we have is to help people and create security and make the world a better place. That is the Geospatial's vision. So the whole point here is that by registering the land, using this whole geospatial infrastructure, and that could start very simple, and it could also be very advanced. It's very scalable and flexible. But then you start to actually help address some of these problems, or at least create the foundation to help address some of these problems. And again, there is a huge role for young surveyors do that.
Yes, and that role, in the context of geospatial and that helping community, where would then professionals actually position themselves? I mean, like you say, we're all familiar with fit for purpose, and the purpose is very wide reaching, as you've just outlined, but the positioning of influence and steering so that they are actually impactful for the good in people's lives. What would you say that would look like?
It's kind of a nebulous question because there are many areas where I see. So just as a comparison, I myself am a cadastral surveyor all the way back from Denmark years ago. And see where I am today, I'm not out doing survey. I'm actually working for one of the largest software companies in the world, helping Africa. And I'm the one talking about geospatial infrastructure. So myself, as an example, have actually stepped into this world. So not only have I focused on surveying, but I've also focused on land registry, I've focused on planning, I've focused on how do you communicate. That's exactly what we do here. I'm sitting in ISO committees, developing standards. I'm guiding governments in Africa to develop policies. So I would say, those are the areas where young surveyors can start to step in and start to work, and it's about, but what's the foundational thing here is that it's really two things. One thing is to understand your field and know it well, and not just that you can do a GPS but really understand and kind of the context around that whole area. And my second part is the geospatial infrastructure, because the geospatial infrastructure is everything that makes this happen. Like I said before, it's about the policies, it's about the organization, standard and guidelines. It's absolutely about technology. It's about the data, how we get data and how we produce information as output. And then how do we communicate this? How can we actually help guide? And if young surveyors could go in and pick up the ball and either work inside government or work with government, or government-like entities, that would be where to go.
Yes. So can I just restate then those two key points? It's that understanding of your field in which you're operating, but secondly, really understanding the geospatial infrastructure, because that's what hangs it all together. But is there anything more, Carsten, that you would add on that?
Yeah, one of the things that we also need to think about is that, so you have these two areas you want to work in, but with COVID right now, everybody is benched in their offices. For example, here at ESRI, we have worked in our offices for 2 years now, and or in our homes, sorry, for 2 years now. And but we have not stopped. We've actually continued to work out. And how we've done that? Well, we've generated what we call an online presence, and we learned to work online. So I think that's another reality that young surveyors need to think about today, is that there can be difficulties in actually meeting face-to-face in some countries. So you really have to start to think about how can you work online? How can you communicate online, like what we do right now? How can you use social media, video conferences,
and also, Carsten, just as with the Voices of Africa, this whole series is about bringing the voices of African professionals, and we're all in a learning curve as to how to do that on this platform. So completely agree with you there.
One of the things that we've realized at ESRI is that when we start to manage and handle and understand and getting the working online actually to work, our reach is so much further. Let me give an example. So for example, we have a yearly user conference in San Diego in California for all our users, and there's approximately between 20 and 30,000 people from the whole world coming in. And these are users. These are our users that meet and learn a lot of new stuff and get a chance to talk with all the experts at ESRI face to face. Obviously, with COVID, we couldn't do that. So what we did instead was we tried to put most of this online. And what we saw was that we saw an increase in participants from 20 to 30,000 to more than 85,000 people now joining the conference. So this is about reach, right? So you need to think about that. If you start to do an online presence as well, you have a bigger reach. So I would say, you know, the key thing for young surveyors is to start to have an online presence.
Although I think some of them probably already have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they build on it. Yes.
Yeah. And exactly. Yeah. And that's the good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. And so on that note, because you're, you know, it's fabulous how you're putting out all these little gems. When we spoke way back when, you were saying, you know, there were some real critical considerations that you wanted to give out. And thank you for thinking about this. And I've actually put them on a slide so that people can see them, but maybe you could quickly run through them. Your top tips, but also I suspect you got a few from ESRI as well.
Yeah, so this geospatial infrastructure, what we're talking about here is kind of it's a very, very broad topic. And I think there's a lot of opportunities. But to help you navigate through that, what ESRI actually has is that we have some programs that can be utilized. And one program is the Young Surveyors Network that gives you access to ArcGIS Online, which is a cloud hosting. We call it platform as a service. And that's, by the way, one thing. Another thing to really bear in mind is that everything in the world is moving to cloud. You're already doing it with your phone. So you need really to understand that space as well. But through the Young Surveyors Network at ESRI, you can actually access ArcGIS Online for free, and you can work and you can educate and learn yourself.
And I want to just interrupt, Carsten, because you're saying Young Surveyors at ESRI. This is not the FIG Young Surveyors. Same platform. It's a different platform. Just to be clear about that.
Oh, okay. So, and the second thing is that for $100, you can actually get access to all of ESRI's platform, and right. You can work with that. And the benefit of that is that we have a lot of training programs. If you go into ESRI training, you can see a lot of training programs. You can run it online, or you can run it on your computer. If you don't have a license with ESRI, and not all training will be available, but if you do have a $100 license with ESRI, everything is free. The third thing is that we also have something called Africa GeoPortal, and I would really urge you to go into Africa GeoPortal. And what it does is that it gives you the ability to look at data, get access to services and tools, and more importantly, it allows you to actually do your own stuff or your own things that could help the communities, and you can put that out there. Brilliant. And you can put it out commercially as well. Yeah, so those are some of the options that you can do. And again, of course, YouTube, there's tons of stuff on YouTube where you can.
Yes. And also your own, you know, the my from Carsten point of view, you've got 7 here on the screen. Can you just quickly run through them?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to say, so really follow your passion. That's the first one. You're going to spend a lot of time here. So I hope you start to understand that this is a very big area. So identify the areas where you would like to be, educate yourself and build capacity, you know, make yourself attractive to other people. And then become a credible generalist or specialist. And myself, I'm the generalist, but you could also say there are areas you want to specialize in. It could be imagery captured through drones, automated feature extracting using machine learning and AI, which is coming forth very quickly. So you also need to identify trends, programs, and opportunities within your area. I've spoken to some of the trends and some of the programs, and you yourself in your own countries would have to sort out the opportunities. Given that so much technology is popping up, I think that you should be, you know, being young surveyors, you should be in a phase where you're very creative. So think about innovation and think about startup and be opportunistic. And like I've hinted a little bit earlier, it's so important to develop networks and connections, both between your peers and with your clients. And then I put in one thing that we have at ESRI, which is kind of a key mantra from Jack Dagemon, And it's very important to make your colleagues, your organization, your clients successful. And if you do that, you become successful yourself. So I think those would be my kind of top things to look for.
Fabulous. Carsten, you know, to share those top tips, and I take from those, you know, the passion, the capacity, be credible, and also know where the opportunities in country are. They're naturally innovative, all our young surveyors, for sure. And networks, that for me is a big one, because throughout life, in your networks, they're the things that really keep you connected. And as you say, always have that mantra. What a brilliant mantra ESRI's got. You know, client success means your success. Really, Carsten, I'm so pleased to have had you on this particular month for our New Year celebration of the Voice of Africa. And I'm sure everybody has really enjoyed listening to you.
I would just say, first of all, thank you for inviting me, giving the opportunity to do this talk and share some of the things that I'm thinking and we're working with here at ESRI. But it's all about, you know, we have a lot of challenges in front of us and we all need to collaborate to do that. It takes a collaborative effort to solve the problems we have, or we are facing.
Thank you, Carsten. Thank you very much, and goodbye to our audience, and see you next month for episode 7. Cheerio, everyone.
Yeah.